Chapter 27. As the sun crept over the mountain tops in the east, the songs of birds filled the air. Almost everyone awakened to listen to the soothing chirps and calls of these small winged creatures as they flew from tree to tree. The air was cool, but it was not as cold as they had expected. The sky grew brighter until it gradually became a vivid shade of blue. The smell of pine surrounded them, and chipmunks scurried across the ground in short sprints, as if scouting the group of humans that seemed so out of place. Eventually everyone got up. A few biscuits and some jerky provided sustenance for the weary travelers, and a nearby stream provided fresh, cool water. They filled their canteens as they exchanged morning pleasantries, except for Row 82, since no one wanted to be pleasant to him. Sig was anxious to depart when he learned that Jonathan had discovered Erica Lawrence was in a small village to the south. Jennifer corroborated the claim, and they soon began traveling. Lizard scurried ahead to scout. The sun climbed higher in the sky as they traveled, but the pine trees in the mountains provided shade. Squirrels and deer darted through the trees, causing everyone but Jennifer and Row 82 to pause and stare in wide-eyed wonder. Moving down the mountain slope seemed easy, and the group moved at a good pace. The amount of life that surrounded them kept everyone relatively quiet during the journey. Jennifer felt more at home seeing a less desolate environment, but what made her happier was watching the expressions of awe on Victor's face. He had dreamed for so long what it must have been like in the Golden Age, and it was clear he was not disappointed. In the afternoon, the group arrived at a clearing with several buildings. Lizard reported that these buildings were uninhabited and consisted of a food store, several homes, some sort of automobile service facility, and a doctor office. "Automobile service facility?" asked Row 82 anxiously. "That's what I said," said Lizard in an irritated tone with his air quotes. "What sorts of automobiles do they have?" he asked. "You didn't find it more significant that it was uninhabited?" said Lizard with air quotes. "Actually," said Lucas, "the inhabitants are most likely back in the mountain cavern with the doctor." Lizard frowned, but knew that Lucas's explanation was plausible. "There were several small vehicles," said Lizard. "I would say they could fit no more than 4 people. There was also a large, tall vehicle." "A van," said Row 82. "Why do you ask?" asked Lizard. "If the owners are sick, they are not likely to object if we borrow the vehicle," said Row 82. "The efficiency of this journey would be increased substantially." Sig gave him a puzzled look. "He means he thinks he can drive us there," translated Lucas. Sig smiled widely. "Let's go," said Sig. Without further discussion, the group hiked down to the cluster of buildings and found them just as Lizard had described. Row 82 approached the van only to find that it would not start. Stephanie turned to Lucas and got out her tablet. "You want to help me fix it?" asked Stephanie. Lucas smiled and nodded. Before long, Sig was pushing the van into the garage in the repair shop as Stephanie and Lucas looked over the tools. Row 82 popped the hood, and soon Stephanie and Lucas were working away. The others waited as the repairs took place. After a few minutes, Jennifer took Victor's hand. "Come on," she said. "Let's check out the store for some supplies." "We'll be back," said Victor as he followed Jennifer to the store. There was a foul smell inside, and they could tell by the moldy bread on some of the shelves and the milk and eggs in the compartments that were no longer refrigerated that the store had been unoccupied for some time. "Wow, that smells awful," said Jennifer. Victor seemed less bothered by the smell, but he nodded his head. They went down the aisles and found a candy section. "Peanut butter M&Ms!" exclaimed Jennifer. "What are those?" asked Victor. Jennifer smiled and opened the bag. "Are they still good?" asked Victor. Jennifer looked inside. "They should be," she said. "These are okay to store at room temperature." She popped a blue piece of candy in her mouth. "Oh, you have got to try one, Victor," she said as she savored the sweet flavor. She put an orange piece of candy in his hand. He looked at the M on the side of it for a moment, then popped it into his mouth. He cautiously bit down and then smiled as the mixture of peanut butter and chocolate flavors oozed through the candy shell. "That is fantastic!" exclaimed Victor. "I know, right?" exclaimed Jennifer with a smile. She poured several more into Victor's hand and then dumped a few into her mouth. After eating for a few moments, Victor looked into Jennifer's eyes. Her heart began racing as she smiled faintly. "Jennifer?" asked Victor. "Yes," she replied softly. Her muscles tensed as she waited for him to speak. "Do you ever have visions?" he asked. She paused and gave a look of confusion. Her hopes of romantic conversation had been dashed by a seemingly random question. "From your divine key, I mean," he added. "No," she said at last with a frown on her face. "Why do you ask?" "Well," said Victor, "I was speaking to Lucas and Stephanie last night, and they have both had visions with their keys in which they saw a man that looked like me, but said he was not me." "That's kind of weird," said Jennifer with a look of confusion. "There's only one divine key that we haven't recovered," said Victor as he looked away, "and I'm pretty confident that Sig is the one that will get the heavenly shield." Jennifer suddenly realized that Victor was confiding in her. He was sharing his doubts and fears. Her disappointment turned into concern and sympathy. "Everyone else has a great destiny," said Victor. "They are bearers of divine keys. I believe what Sig said. I believe the world was meant to be saved, and I believe that is part of the reason that such things as divine keys exist at all." Jennifer searched his eyes and pulled a lock of golden hair behind her ear as she tried to think of something that might help to ease Victor's doubts. "I thought that I would be satisfied coming along and helping however I could," said Victor as he looked at the ground. "But why would I be showing up in visions? What is my purpose? Am I actually helping, or am I getting in the way?" "Victor," said Jennifer, "you have never been in anyone's way. You have helped everyone. She cleared her throat and looked into Victor's eyes. She slowly got closer to him and pushed a lock of dark hair behind his ear. She smiled softly and pulled herself closer to him. They both began to close their eyes, preparing to kiss. Suddenly the roar of an engine startled them, and Jennifer leapt back. Victor got up and twisted around. Stephanie and Lucas smiled as the van's motor echoed through the cluster of buildings. "Fantastic!" shouted Sig excitedly. "That's our ride," said Victor softly as he stood up and offered his hand to Jennifer. As she took his hand, he pulled her up. He turned and walked out the doors. Neither one of them had seen the other close their eyes, and neither one of them heard the other as the door closed, but they both whispered the same thing quietly so the other could not hear. "Stupid van." As it was, Jennifer quickly left the store and followed Victor to the van where the others were loading. Victor looked awkwardly at Jennifer and then turned away when he saw her wide eyes, assuming that she had been frightened by his attempt to kiss her rather than the engine. She assumed that his turning away was because he had been frightened by her forwardness. They were both under the impression that the other was uninterested in romance as they entered the van. The vehicle had enough benches to seat everyone, though not exactly comfortably. Lizard insisted on remaining outside and traveling with his key. It was clear that he loved teleporting. Sig sat in the front passenger seat and was instructed by Kirana and Stephanie to take Row 82 out if he tried anything. Row 82 was the only one with driving skills, and he sat in the driver's seat. Jonathan sat on the edge of a bench, and Stephanie rushed to sit next to him. Kirana pressed her lips together tightly and sat down next to Lucas in a bench just behind the front bucket seats. Lucas sat right in the middle so he could see out the windshield. Kirana sat next to the door and put her head down. Jennifer and Victor sat in the third bench next to one another. They looked down and remained silent, both imagining the worst about the other's feelings. "What are these?" asked Jonathan as he picked up the ends of a seat belt buckle. Stephanie reached over and clicked them together. "I don't understand." "It's to keep you from flying forward if we stop suddenly," said Lucas as he buckled up. The others decided this might be a good idea, since they did not know what to expect. Soon everyone was buckled. Row 82 put the van into reverse and backed out of the garage. After positioning the wheel correctly, he put the vehicle into drive, and the van slowly gathered speed. Sig laughed heartily. Soon they were traveling on the paved road that led from the cluster of buildings to the foothills below. The sunshine flashed in between the tall trees as they wound around the mountain. Kirana almost immediately began feeling nauseated. "How long will this last?" she murmured. Jennifer unbuckled and got up. She pressed the switch that lowered the window near Kirana down and then returned to her seat. Kirana pulled her face to the cool, rushing air and closed her eyes. The air felt so fresh and smelled so clean that she felt relief from her turning stomach. "That is better," admitted Kirana softly. Jennifer smiled as the cool air blew in her face. After a few minutes, everyone settled in. Most everyone fell asleep, except for Sig. He tried to keep his laughter quiet as he watched Lizard teleport from place to place along the route. An hour into the drive, the steep grade and winding turns ended, and the road became more level and straight. There were fewer trees on the ground, but there was a light green grass that filled the space off of the pavement. Eventually, they began to see other vehicles on the road. Sig looked at them and waved enthusiastically. The people driving gave him looks of confusion. "I don't think they're used to waving at everyone that passes by," said Row 82. "Maybe not," laughed Sig. The van approached a fork in the road. Lizard stood at the signpost as if asking which way he should go. "Left," shouted Jennifer in the back. Row 82 merged over and Lizard vanished from sight. There were several more forks in the road as they drove into the afternoon. Finally, Row 82 pulled off of the road via an exit. Kirana, Stephanie, and Jonathan were asleep and did not notice. "Why are you turning here?" asked Sig. "We're nearly out of fuel," said Row 82. "You better let me handle this," said Jennifer as the van came to a stop. She turned to Victor. "Would you join me?" she asked nervously. Victor smiled and nodded, hoping that the awkwardness and silence between them had ended. They got out of the vehicle. "Did they take credits here?" asked Victor as he reached for his payment drive. She smiled and nodded. As the two of them walked into the gas station, the attendant opened his eyes widely. You're Jennifer Cedar," he stuttered. She smiled. "I am accompanying some individuals on an investigation, and we require some additional fuel," said Jennifer. "But I'm a little low on credits, and I was hoping you could help me." The attendant nodded. Yeah, said the attendant excitedly. "If it's FS business, it's no problem." "Thank you," said Jennifer. She turned and walked out the door to tell Lucas he could pump fuel. Victor walked down the aisles and located a bag of peanut butter M&Ms. He smiled and carried it to the attendant. "Can I get these for her?" he asked. "She loves them." "Of course," said the attendant. "Thanks for your help," said Victor. "Thank you for your service," said the attendant. Victor smiled and turned to Jennifer, who had come back into the store. He took her hand and poured a few pieces of candy into it. She smiled widely as she popped them into her mouth. "Thank you, Victor," she said softly. She did not want to make anything more awkward, but she was thrilled that Victor had agreed to come with her, and that he had given her the peanut butter M&Ms. They walked back to the van as Lucas stowed the pump. After another moment to get buckled, they went back on the road. The drive lasted another day, which was mostly uneventful. Finally, Jennifer directed them to a small road off the main highway. In the distance, they saw a group of stone and cement towers. "This seems vaguely familiar," said Sig as he looked at the towers. "I know what you mean," agreed Victor. He also seemed to remember having seen similar towers somewhere, but he could not place them. "I agree," said Row 82. "I feel as though I have seen these structures before." Lizard appeared next to the vehicle and motioned for them to stop. Row 82 slowed the vehicle to a halt. Sig rolled down his window and grinned. "How are you, my friend?" asked Sig. "Don't you recognize where this is?" asked Lizard. His voice and the slowing of the car caused Kirana, Stephanie, and Jonathan to stir. "Are we there yet?" mumbled Jonathan. Stephanie smiled softly. Kirana opened her eyes and gasped as she saw the towers. "What is this?" demanded Kirana angrily. "This is where Erica Lawrence lives," said Jennifer in a confused tone. "Am I missing something?" "Imagine the towers linked with tall, icy walls," said Lizard with air quotes. "Also imagine it's nighttime." Sig's eyes widened. Victor turned to Jennifer. "That's where Kirana was born," whispered Victor. Jennifer's eyes grew wide. She had not been to the icy castle to rescue Sig because she had become exhausted by slowing down time so they could travel quickly. She and Daniel Young had then been kidnapped by Row 82 and sold to Kappa 16 as slaves. The others that had been there began to recognize the place. Row 82 parked the vehicle and they got out to walk the remaining distance. "What happened here, Kirana?" asked Jonathan. "I don't know," said Kirana dismissively. She felt a strange mixture of nostalgia and confusion. She had never imagined the sun shining on her childhood home. She had always remembered the icy walls and staircases throughout the complex. The group approached the gates at the front of the complex. There was a panel near the gates with numeric buttons. "Are we breaking down the door?" asked Row 82, who was uncertain why they were stopping. "No," said Lucas. He held his key, and after a brief moment punched several buttons in sequence. The gates slid apart, and they walked in. Eventually, they came to a cement home near the bunker in the center of the complex. Kirana was surprised to see the bunker surrounded by bright flowers. Red and yellow blossoms swayed in the light breeze in carefully planted rows next to each side of the bunker, almost as though it were a tomb. "This is it," said Jennifer slowly. "Don't expect much." She knocked on the door as the others crowded around behind her. After a minute of silence, it creaked open. "Jennifer Cedar?" came a low female voice from inside the house. "Erica Lawrence," said Jennifer. "It's Erica Kingsley," she said in an irritated tone. "And what do you want?" "You're right, Erica. Forgive me. May we come in?" asked Jennifer politely. "Whatever," came the reply. The door swung back so they could all see a beautiful dark-haired woman with blue eyes that looked strangely similar to Kirana. She wore a plain dark dress, and she motioned to everyone to come into her home. She kept her head down as if she did not want to look at any of them. Once they were inside, she shut the door and motioned to the various chairs arranged around the large living room. "Okay, now what do you want?" asked Erica in an irritated tone. "We want to defeat the destroyer," said Jennifer. "The who?" asked Erica. "Have you been talking to Aaron Pratt again?" "Get out! I'm done with this." She opened her front door and pointed her finger outside, gesturing to the others. "Hang on," said Jennifer. "No, you hang on," said Erica angrily. "Did Drew put you up to this? Didn't I tell him that I was through? I'm not a part of the council anymore. The Key of Origins is sealed away in the Eastern Shrine, and I intend to live the rest of my life away from you people." "The Key of Origins is right here," said Lucas as he pulled it out. "Oh, good for you, kid," said Erica sarcastically. "You found a key. Why don't you run along and look for the door it unlocks?" "There's no need to be unkind, Erica," said Jennifer with a frown. "There's no need to harass me, Jennifer," retorted Erica. "Besides, he can't use it anyway. I'm the only one that can." Lucas's eyes began glowing. "Is that so?" asked Lucas. Erica raised an eyebrow and looked at Lucas. It was clear she had not expected him to activate its power, but after a brief pause she spoke. "Who are you?" she asked. "I'm Lucas Flynn," he answered, "and I am the key-bearer for the Key of Origins." "That can't be the Key of Origins," said Erica at last. "Let me see it." Lucas's eyes stopped glowing as he handed the key to Erica. Her eyes glowed brightly for a moment. She returned the key to Lucas and then turned to Jennifer. "You've brought people from the future?" asked Erica. "Too many have been lost in our time," said Jennifer. "Joshua, Peter, you." Erica closed her eyes as if it were painful to hear the names Joshua and Peter. "Don't call it our time," said Erica in a low voice. "What?" said Jennifer in confusion. "Don't act like you're one of us," said Erica. "What are you saying?" asked Jennifer. Have you forgotten again? Asked Erica with a frown. Peter didn't recruit you as he did the others. You aren't from our time. Jennifer had not fully reclaimed her memories, but she had seemed so comfortable and familiar when they had traveled to this time that she had felt as if she were returning home. She felt like she was sharing her culture by giving Victor some peanut butter M&Ms. She had felt as though she belonged, but as Erica spoke the words, she realized that she was right. You came here from the ancient past, Jennifer, said Erica. You came with weird clothing and amnesia. You can't solve our problems. You never could.